Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show, we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Quantum Leap. A lot of really interesting things went down on this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, I like the aspect of, where the last episode left off is where we're picking up. Now, I don't know if the original, once again, haven't seen any of the original series yet. I don't know if that's how that show was originally structured too, like where he ends up, where Sam ended up at the end of one episode would be where he would end up. That would be what the next episode's about. Ben landed on the Atlantis in the end of last episode, and then the entire episode's about this. And jumping ahead a little bit, where the episode ends, I'm assuming that's all episode 3 is going to be about. So I think that's such an interesting thing. I always think it's interesting when stories like structure stuff like that. Example of that would be like Evil. Sometimes at the end of an episode of Evil, they'll reference the next case that they're going to be working on, and that ends up being the actual next episode of the show. So I think that's such an interesting storytelling device of literally going from setting up one story to, because sometimes you get a Doctor Who situation, once this adventure's over, the next episode you'll pick up, it's we went on an adventure you didn't get to see. This show could easily be a combination of all of that. So there might be some episodes where we're getting like a 1, 2, and 3, it seamlessly transitions into the next episode. Or maybe it's going to be every once in a while we go, oh man, that was a wild adventure we had in the 80s, yada, 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 doing so and so forth. And then the next episode, whatever. So I think that'd be interesting to see if they continue this trajectory. Like I said, if episode 3 keeps up the trend, and even if it does, who knows how far along the season is going to keep along with that. So I think that's such an interesting aspect. But I also forgot a key opponent, because I was thinking because they were in a spaceship, for whatever reason in my head I was thinking it must be the 60s or something. I'm assuming it's Neil Armstrong and everything, going to the moon. It's of course it's not, because the whole point of Quantum Leap is you're going through time, but it has to be specifically in your lifetime. You can't go outside of that. I think they mentioned that's the rules of it in the first episode that I forgot about. So I don't know how old Ben is, but I would assume he's a 70s, 80s baby. So I'd assume because 60s would be out of his lifetime, I think, It's kind of maybe I'm just conflating that and maybe they didn't say that, and maybe I'm just taking that from the time traveler's wife. I don't remember if that's how that works in the book, but I know that's how it worked in the show. Specifically, Harry could go, I say Henry. Once again, I'm comparing and contrasting a lot of time travel stuff, but it's just I like, once again, understanding the rules of time travel. But this is a really interesting episode in particular, because Ben is on the Atlantis, and at first no one knows where he is, but the team is also kind of divided on how they approach the Ben situation, because Addison kind of tears their place apart, and Ian's oh my god, someone broke in. It's no, I did all this, because there was some stuff hidden here, I found his phone, maybe something else was hidden here as well, so okay. And I love that moment between Ian and Addison's yeah, we're in this together. And he's no, she's I thought we were in this together. He's no, we are in this together. She's no, me and Ben. And he's oh, okay. And later on, he brings it up and yeah, just the awkwardness of it. He's I got past it. But I love the awkwardness of Ian. I was yeah, Ian seems probably that super genius person that is a little socially awkward, being oh, this is this awkward moment, and I kind of died a little on the inside when you had to correct me because I completely misjudged the situation, but I ended up moving past it regardless. I love that. I was and I felt like Ian was going to be the type of person who would hold on to that. They sure are. So I love that. Either way, like I said, the team is divided because, Addison found a flash drive, but she doesn't want to tell the rest of the team because Jen and Magic don't really trust Ben. It's wait, maybe we shouldn't be letting him remember too much, because we don't know what his true motives are, why he did what he did, why he decided to leap. So maybe it's best to keep him in the dark. Addison's not too keen about that. She has every reason to kind of be a little biased in this situation, because it's right, this is her fiance, this is the man she's going to marry. She's I know him, he would never do anything duplicitous. Regardless of that, she still doesn't know why he did this, why he didn't tell her. And that was something she was talking with Ian about, we've been a part of this project for so long. It's kind of where they met, and the fact is that they would have to like not talk about work at home, but this project is such a big part of their life, and she felt like we were in this together. And now that he kept this secret from her, it feels like, was this ever really just ours if you were doing stuff on the side and I was kind of kept in the dark? It's like, I think I know Ben, but it's like there's still things he kept from me that I got blindsided like just the rest of the team. So Jin and Magic are kind of more on the same side of like, right, we want to keep him in the dark. We can't rule it out as a possibility, especially when you throw in the Janice of it all. Like, right, maybe Janice co-opted him. Did he cooperate Janice? Talking to Janice later on, it seems Ben sought her out. And the fact is she's going about things the way she is kind of makes you go like, I wonder if there's going to be any correlation with her dad as why she's doing what she's doing. Like, what is she getting out of this is the big, question. And why would, what is her, like, she wanted to be a part of, like, the Quantum Leap project because her father was, but they felt like she was too close to Sam and her dad for her to be a part of the project, so they needed someone, I guess, with some objectivity. They couldn't really trust her to be objective in this circumstances, so I guess that's what's really, so I don't think she has bad intentions, and maybe like her and Ben's goals are aligned, but we'll kind of break that down a little bit later on. But in this particular episode, the person Ben is in is a guy named David, and it turns out, hey, remembering who David is actually sparked something in Ben, because Ben's like, hey, he immigrated from like Japan, and he ended up being like, I think, was it like the first, I don't know if they said like he was the first like Asian astronaut, but at least like he immigrated from Japan, wanted to be an astronaut, and he did, and it inspired, because Ben's like, yeah, I immigrated from Korea, so like there was a little bit of similarities between our stories because I wanted to be an astronaut, and it actually helped Ben remember, but it wasn't enough to trigger any further memories. But his memory is there slowly but surely. It is going to finally like the block neural pathways will eventually open up. I guess it's just going to take the dominoes of stuff triggering to kind of fully remember everything. And obviously, like, the awkwardness of, like, well, not awkwardness, but even just sadness of him noticing, like, oh, you have a ring. Like, who's the lucky guy? It's like, you wouldn't remember him. Fair enough. And she's like, but he's like, when's the wedding? She's like, in 6 months. He's like, oh, well, I hope I'm there. And she's like, you better be. So kind of that sad thing of how, and that ended up, that point in particular is what is a point that Jin tried to stress, because it's like, right, Addison, you're barking at her with these orders like Magic. I get where you're coming from, but you also had to look at things from from Addison's perspective of, hey, she got blindsided by all of this as well. This isn't just like some random person. This is someone that, she wasn't supposed to be the hologram in this situation. It was supposed to be Ben, and now it's like those roles are reversed, and now he's bouncing between time. We don't know if we'll even get him back. We hope we can, but we don't know for sure. And the fact is that, this is a hard situation for her, and so you shouldn't be looking at her like this shouldn't be an adversarial situation. We should be in this together, because they ended up talking about it, and I think it's interesting because Jen kind of filled the Ben role this episode, which Ben kind of plays that role a little bit where he is in 98, but we'll get to that soon enough. But Jen was kind of the mediator. She kind of mediated things with Ian to try and convince Ian, like, right, get Addison to turn the device, the thumb drive. I saw you like slip into your pocket. The whole like lying and stuff like that isn't what Ian's not comfortable. It's like, right, we should all be on the same team. But Addison is like, no, we need to be in this together because they don't trust Ben. I do. And she's also the one that convinced Magic. And like, no, we need to all be on the same team here. And ultimately, they ended up coming together because of that. I think Jen kind of took a page out of Ben's book, because it's like, right, Ben was always the one, because Jen had said like everyone, like Ian kind of gets lost in like the numbers and the science of it all, and looking down a path of things that like ultimately ended up meaning nothing. But you see this look on Ian's face, like, ow, like he didn't have to put it like that. But it's like, yeah, while me and Magic are so focused on security, and Addison's got things on her route of things, it's like Ben was the one that he was the glue that held us together. Without the center of our group, we're kind of drifting apart. But now they ended up kind of coming back together because of that center of their group. But anyway, once again, breaking down the aspect of it all, just like, right, being able to be on a space station is awesome and great and everything. It's fun. But the problem is David dies here. And they ultimately, looking through some sealed records, they find out he died because he was hit by some debris. And it's like, all right, as long as I don't go out there spacewalking, I'm good. And like, I get it. I didn't know that was like because the first time I ever heard that term was the 100, because there's spacewalking in that as well. But regardless, the problem is, because of the circumstance they're in, basically they're limited. They've got limited air, and they basically have to jettison a part of like what they have so they could be in a better position to go back home. And he has to moonwalk, so it's like, cool. Like, the fact is, he was initially like, oh, we should like, the whole running the test and all that should be, that's going to be like 20 minutes. We should just skip all that. And I was like, you never know with time travel, because you don't know if, like, right, what if David decided to skip all that and that ended up leading to the circumstances? Of like, not really. But the problem is, like, it's not an exact record, because yeah, everything ended up working out fine. Everything was fantastic. But the problem is the debris came earlier. It's like, ooh, I dodged the debris. Hey, I'm still alive. Cool. I'm going to leap. It's like, the leap doesn't work like that. It doesn't kind of work on your terms. It works on you when, like, the work is done, like when you're done doing what you need to do. But the problem is, things got worse. It's like the domino effect. It's like, cool, you tried to do the right thing. It's like, oh, maybe I'm here to save David's life. Oh, cool. David survived, but the problem is the debris ended up hitting the shuttle, and now if they try to re-enter on Earth's atmosphere, they all die. So like, cool. So it went from bad to like, hey, everything's oh, never mind, things are bad again. In fact, things are actually worse than they were in the original timeline because of the changes. So once again, I think it's just purely a projection standpoint of just like how Ziggy works, because I was like, there's no way because time itself doesn't change immediately. Once again, it's very fluid, because if it changed immediately, how are they able to remember the original time? And once again, I'm getting so caught up on those details, and I'm like, how does that work? Because maybe even the changes that they've made haven't been solidified yet. And maybe they remember like, oh, we changed some stuff in that time, but we don't remember what the original timeline was. Or once again, maybe Ziggy is able to keep that information. Like, how do you protect this? How do you protect like your machine's knowledge of like the space-time continuum not getting rewritten like everyone's memories? You know, that's all like, I don't know how that necessarily works. But like I said, maybe it's flowing into what I thought. Like it takes a while for time to completely solidify. So even the events of last episode, it's going to be a while before those ripples fully hit the space-time continuum and like affect the general timeline. So maybe the same thing has happened in this regard. So like even the original timeline, they still remember how things were supposed to go with like Ryan dying in episode 1, but now they're like, okay, well, we know how things are eventually going to play out because of Ziggy, how the ripple effects happen. It's just like maybe time hasn't solidified yet, because they didn't even touched on that. And I guess maybe the argument is no, it's just like, right, they remember that Ben was there, but they don't remember like, oh, what did you change exactly? Like, oh, wasn't things always like this? We haven't had that conversation yet. I'm assuming the show's going to have that, because you have to. It's kind of like typical, you know, it's just part of like the time travel thing, right? So anyway, back to the Atlantis. They have two choices to make. It's like, cool, we go ahead with the re-entry despite David's reservations. Like, yeah, the parts of the shuttle that were hit are a lot more damaged than we're thinking about, and we could burn up in re-entry. And it comes down to Stratton, because she's the one that's in, you know, control right now. She's the commanding officer, especially because they can't get in contact with ground control. So it's like, which I do appreciate them playing David Bowie. Just for that little bit, you're immediately like, how much money did that cost you to get the licensing for that? I'm always fascinated by that, because I'm like, it's a David Bowie song, so you're like, oh man, so you had to probably pay up the wazoo for that. But I'm curious like how much a typical licensing fee. I'm sure it varies from artist to artist. Probably like the residuals of it, like probably a lot goes into that, you know. It probably depends on the artist, depends on like the record label, the music dealings, like, you know, songs being used in perpetuity and stuff like that. Like those, you probably have to pay the licensing fee in perpetuity for a show just because like that episode will still exist, and being able to keep the music in that episode. I don't know if that disappears with the licensing rights or whatever. You know, once again, it's just it kind of gets my mind spiraling, but I'm like, oh, I like that. Of course, with the current circumstances, it's the most befitting song ever for that moment. But yeah, not being able to get in touch with ground control, it's like, right, it's up to Stratton, except her mentor, the guy who's kind of in control. We've seen that actor in a multitude of things. I had to look into it. The actress who plays Stratton, I'm like, I recognize her, I'm just not sure what I recognize her from. Either way, with the commander back in control, now it's a thing of like, no, I'm giving the orders, because he's the mentor and he thinks like, right, he's always been the one that's like, right, the whole, oh, told you so thing, you know, and she admires him, she cares for him. It's like, right, I promised his wife that I would bring him back, but he thinks he knows better than her, because it's like, right, she's like, in your eyes, I will always just be the rookie in this situation, so you're not willing to listen to me because you're thinking you're right about this, because it's also that situation of like, it is the US versus Russia thing too. Like, which is, God, that topic, it's like so topical without even meaning to be topical. Like, God knows when this was written, and, you know, but it's like just interesting. But I mean, obviously it also plays inside a general space race has always been like, I mean, it's not just US and Russia. It was like US, Russia, and China weren't like the three major players when it came to like the space race back in the 60s. It was all three of them. Like, I think they were the major heavy hitters. I want to say China, but I definitely know it was Russia. I think they were saying like, I think China or Russia were like super right behind the US. The US like barely like made it out. My history could be 100% wrong. Don't take me for a fact. I'm not a historian. I don't remember world history or even US history that well, because that was well over a decade ago in high school and I took that. But regardless, so I understand it's like, it's a little bit of that, like, we can't turn to the Russians for help. No, like, you know how much of an embarrassment that would be for the US. It's like, right, we're trying to get home and survive, but that was still an argument being used. So it's, you know, it's because that was such an important thing about like, no, we can't rely on like the enemy. Like, they're our adversaries, our rivals. We can't rely on them. Not be an embarrassment that we had to. So a little bit of that. But ultimately, Stratton was going to do things behind everyone's back and lock the others out of the system. And it's like, oh, cool, like, great, everything works. But then Ben ended up telling the others what she was planning. And it's like, wait, why are you doing that? Because Ben's like, he doesn't want Stratton to get in trouble, because it's like, us, like, her doing this is just going to put them further at odds. Whether she's right or not is going to cause so much conflict. But it's like, right, she's doing this because she believes this. Like, you may not be able to see it, but she does. She isn't the same rookie. Like, all the told you so's that you told her about, like, they've all prepared her for this moment. She isn't just some rookie anymore. She's the person that you helped forge her into. So trust her in this moment. Allow her to do this. Trust that she knows what she's doing, what she's talking about. So they kind of give her the leeway, and now it's up to basically, I love the whole, like, right, someone's going to have to go outside and basically use that device to kind of send a message to the Russians on the Mir, that being their space station, their space satellite or whatever. And I love that. It's like, yeah, someone's going to have to go out there, and they all turn into Ben/David, and it's like, maybe we can find another way. It's like, cool. Second space walk, still pretty dope. But the problem is they can't reach the Russians. It's not like they're not able to see you. It's not like they're ignoring you, because of the time zone, they're asleep. So it's like, okay. So Ben takes a metaphorical and literal leap of faith as he goes towards the Mir, and you're like, man, that super close, because he literally grabbed onto one of the last things he could grab onto for that space station, because that was going to super suck, because, you know, he had to grab onto something, and he also had to make sure he latched on, because if he didn't, would have been floating in space forever, and that'd be the end of that. So, but luckily was able to get in contact with the Russians, and ultimately everything works out. All of them end up making their way back home. In fact, David becomes the first astronaut, like, wasn't like on this, like, that, like, lives on the space station in the future. So it all works out. Even Stratton becoming like a higher marked person. So it all worked out in the end. And so David and Ben moves on, leaps to the next place. And like I said, at the end, we have everyone ultimately coming together, putting all their differences aside, like, right, Magic realizing, like, I'm from a military perspective. All I've known is the military for so long in my life. So I'm so used to barking out orders, but it's like, right, this isn't what this is. This might be a military related project, but we are a specialized team. So all of us should be involved in the decision making. I shouldn't be kind of making things kind of a unilateral decision. It's like Ben kind of made enough of that himself that kind of spiraled us and put us in this position in the first place. But Addison agrees, like, right, we need to find out more about Ben. Yes, Ben is showing that he's still Ben, but we don't know what his motivations are. We can't let, like, sentimentality get in the way of, like, no, Ben did this for a reason. We got to find out why. And she even says, like, yeah, Ben even agreed himself that he's like, oh, it bums him out, like, right, you don't trust me, but he does understand the reasoning behind it. And even saying, like, because even Addison's like, right, if Ben was here, you would be the one to say, like, no, like, would probably have that same mentality about it. So Jen and Magic did get a drive from Janice's place, which there's multiple things. One, the fact is her mom lied about, like, right, we're not on the best of terms. We haven't talked in over a year. Like, after her dad died, she kind of withdrew. There's probably some truth to that, but maybe because she's like, right, you're in trouble. I need to know that you're okay. Like, what's going on? And Janice is like, Mom, I'm fine. I'm pretty sure that's probably what that conversation was like. But even Janice being like, you shouldn't have got my mom involved. It's like, well, you kind of put your mom involved in all this when you made this decision to do all this. But like I said, going to the extremes that she is to cover things up, is that just her part in things of like, oh, I need to do this? Or is it just a situation of Ben told her to take such precautions because he didn't want the team to find out what he was doing ahead of time? Because if they did, they would have what they needed to pull the plug on things or stop him. Which, using the thumb drive they found in conjunction with the drive that was at Genesis, they found basically a quantum leap roadmap, which I don't know if Sam had one, because everywhere he landed was like very random. But even this is still up to chance because it's like millions of variables about where Ben could land. I guess I'm curious like what those variables are that could decide, oh, why you ended up in 1988 instead of 2001. I'm curious about that. But it seems like it's all roadmaps leading to one very specific point in time, unaware what it is. I mean, because even if the rules are that it has to be somewhere in Ben's timeline, which once again, I still don't remember if I'm pulling that from the first episode or whether I'm just conflating that with the time traveler's wife, which even that had some wiggle room because he met his parents and stuff like that. He saw when they first met, and that was like obviously well before he was even conceived. So I wonder if kind of like the rules are kind of a little gray in that regard, that there's some loopholed areas in that like time frame, if that ends up being what the case is. But they have no idea when or where that destination is or even why he's trying to reach that point in time. But he's like, this is bigger than you and me. This is bigger than us. It seems like this might not have anything to do with Sam, because I was going to comment on this, but I'll leave a comment talking about it last episode. I'll talk about it this episode, though. I didn't read too much into it, but I know Scott Bakula, I think, just generally speaking, was like, said, like, yeah, I have nothing to do with the Quantum Leap reboot. So I was like, okay, so there's no going to be seeing any Sam or anything. I mean, once again, it's that thing of people like, well, with the Marvel stuff, you're like, well, people lie. People have to lie because Disney puts in the secrecy. But I don't know. I think that would probably ruin a big surprise if he was a part of it. But I don't know. Maybe he's just like, maybe he had no interest in wanting to come back. Maybe it's a money thing of like, they weren't going to pay me enough to come back. Or, maybe he just like, I did what I wanted to with that story. That was like, the show ended like the early 90s. It's like, it's been over, once again, it's been like 20 years. No. 30 years, in fact, basically, because I think the show ended like 92, 93 or something like that. So it's like, yeah, of course, like, it's like, yeah, that's a part of my life and part of my career, but I want nothing to do with it anymore. Multitude of reasons, and, I respect any actor's reasons for deciding not to be a part of a project that's kind of a reboot of like something that you've done in the past. Once again, everyone has their reasonings. Either way, so it seems like it might not have anything to do with Sam it might be related to Sam. Like, he might not pop up in the show, but maybe it might not have a thing of like, oh, we're going to get Sam back and, you know, potentially end up saving him in the process. But maybe it's like, along all the quantum leaping Sam did, he discovered something that now Ben is aware of. And now they're trying to follow Sam's tracks to find this particular point in time. Maybe it's a personal thing, which I doubt it is. It seems like whatever this is, it's probably like a crucial thing. Might be like a space-time continuum collapsing type of event. Like, we need to stop this before like it reaches out and once again, space and time collapses. Maybe like there's going to be one specific point in time that changes everything. Maybe there's going to be some personal history related, because why would Janice like be a part of all of this? What is Ben going to get out of this? What is she getting out of it? Those are the big questions. So at the very least, like I said, it's not a precise roadmap, but they do have a general speaking idea of like, okay, there's variables. I don't know if there's any percentages of like, once again, like, oh, maybe he has an 88% chance of landing in 1988, or he has like a 17% chance of landing in 2001 or something like that. I'm curious, like, if there's like a percentage like that, or is it just kind of like variables to be like, there's a likelihood, just maybe it's just like a, oh, you could be here, you could be here. Like, maybe there's not even like a really 100% quantifiable way to like be extra sure like which place Ben will most likely land next. I don't know. Like I said, it's going to be interesting to see going forward, because there being a roadmap actually plays into the show like sliding into the next episode very nicely. If, like I said, if there is in fact like a roadmap to some extent of where Ben is going. We saw the jump off point in 2022, but we see the end goal, and it's just millions of variables to get to that point. And at the center of this Tootsie Pop, that is the space-time continuum, this quantum leap situation. So either way, I found this all really fascinating, and I'm excited to see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good